Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Chaucer's Books Virtual Author Discussion with Natasha Diong. My name is Michael Takeuchi, and I'm the events coordinator at Chaucer's Bookstore, a 47-year-old independent bookstore located in Santa Barbara, California. To purchase tonight's book, The Perishing, browse other titles, or check out our upcoming events, please go to our website at chaucersbooks.com. While our guests and myself are the only ones seen and heard on this webinar, please feel free to utilize the chat function located, or the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. Tonight's event is being simulcasted on and recorded for our YouTube channel and will be available after program's completion. If you would like to ask a question via YouTube, where most of you are, many of you are, please type in the chat function there. So let's begin. Tonight we welcome Natasha Diong, a writer of the Los Angeles Times once called the hardest working debut novelist in Los Angeles. But perhaps they're understating that after you get a snippet of her biography I'm going to read here. Natasha is an NAACP Image Award nominee. She's a practicing criminal attorney and college professor, a Pamela Krasny Moral Courage Fellow. Natasha is the author of the critically acclaimed debut novel, Grace, which is named the best book by the New York Times. Deón has been awarded fellowships by PEN America, Prague Summer Program for Writers, Dickinson House in Belgium, the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And now you're getting a degree in psychology, correct?
I am. Can you believe that? Like I have all this extra time. No, I am. Enrolled at Fuller, taking a little break this semester to deal with all these blessings. That's what I'm calling them. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy.
Well, we are so pleased to have you because The Perishing is a wonderful, wonderful novel. And I am so pleased to hear you talk about it. And to join Natasha in conference, let's bring out Cassandra Lane. Hi, Cassandra. Cassandra is as busy as Natasha here. She's a Los Angeles-based writer and editor. Ms. Lane is the winner of the Louise Merriweather First Book Prize and author of We Are Bridges, a memoir by the Feminist Press. NPR called it a stunning contribution to what must become our collective memory. Congratulations on that, Cassandra. Cassandra also received her MFA from Antioch University in Los Angeles. She formerly worked as a newspaper reporter, high school teacher, college admissions advisor, senior writer, and community relations manager for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Her stories have appeared in the New York Times Conception Series, the Times Picayune, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and elsewhere. She is currently the editor-in-chief of LA Parent Magazine. So please welcome Cassandra Lane.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael.
Go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much, Chaucer's Books and Michael, for having us. Thank you, Natasha, for inviting me. I'm so honored. I'm absolutely honored. Thank you to everyone who's here tonight or watch this later. Author Jamie Ford says The Perishing is one part lyrical mystery, one part history lesson you didn't learn in school, one part time machine, and I could not agree more. I felt like I was reading this beautiful quilt of fiction. Of course, yes, it's a novel, but also memoir, poetry, philosophy, and even journalism, which of course touched my old reporter's heart. For those of you who haven't read The Perishing, had the pleasure of reading The Perishing yet, I'm going to try not to, reveal any spoilers. But I can't wait to talk to you about this beautiful, mind-blowing book, Natasha. Do you want me to do a quick little synopsis of the book? Or do you want to give your author's version?
I would like to first say thank you, Cassandra, for being here. And thank you, Chaucer Books, for having me. This is awesome. And for you, I'm honored that you would say yes. So that's what I want to say. Now you can say it.
Okay. A quick little synopsis. Lou, a young Black woman, wakes up in an alley in 1930s Los Angeles with no memory of how she got there or where she's from or to whom she belongs. And I remember seeing that in like months ago in her early promotions. And I was like, yes, I'm sold already. First, a period piece, a Black woman, she's immortal, which we quickly learn. And yet over time, she develops these beautiful relationships. I love the friendship between Lou and Esther, and the relationship that she has with her foster family as well. So despite these gaping holes in history, despite her supernatural powers, you might say, she's very human. She goes on to become the first Black journalist at none other than our local paper of record, the Los Angeles Times. So as a former newspaper reporter, I was just delighted by that journey, her journey into the world. I remember starting off not in a basement, but also a tiny little, suburban satellite office, which was formerly really known for its KKK history. And I'm one of just a couple of Black reporters, and that's where they put me. So I just really related to her story on that level, as well as others. And I also love the journey that that the narrators take us through Los Angeles, historically and present day. So before we jump into all the meat of it, I'd love to hear you read a page or two. Are you open to that?
Oh, right on. I was prepared just in case that would happen.
Yes.
I wasn't ready the last time I was at. Like, oh, okay. Let's see. So I'm just going to read from chapter 0. So the opening chapter.
Okay.
I didn't call it a prologue. I called it chapter 0 because,
I love that.
Okay. My name is Sarah Shipley, and I've slept with 5 women. Since I married a man, no one asks the kind of persons I choose anymore. I've been married 6 times, all of them men, and all of them taken from me. By God or by man, death in all cases. My first husband is who I remember most. First husband was once born in 1948 and was murdered, just like my third. But I wasn't surprised. Devastated, but not surprised. We're all on the verge of somebody else's violence. So that's just the opening.
Oh, just so powerful. And Michael said he wanted to hear your voice reading it. Because it is such a pleasure to hear you read it. I could hear you because I know you. I could hear, of course, these are fictional characters, but I could still hear that beauty, that poetry, that philosopher that you are as I was reading it. And we'll get into a little bit of that later, but such a pleasure. Thank you for reading an excerpt. So I want to just start off with, where do your visions come from? I see you as a visionary. And by visions, I mean the philosophies that help drive your fiction and also your creative visions, in particular for this book, The Perishing. Just where did it come from?
I wish I could say it came from one place, a dream but I think it's just, for me, it's an allegory for life as a Black woman anyway. The ways in which we have to restart our lives, especially in this country, every time something happens, either not just to us, but people outside of us that can just drastically change our trajectory. Having children obviously is one, a loved one, a partner who does something, because we go on this journey. We have a tendency to go on journeys with other people. And in the meantime, we live so many different lives, starting and restarting over and over again. And and it feels like an immortality, you just sort of, you have these lives that feel like they happened so long ago, so outside of even who we are today. So George Floyd can be killed in another state, and it affects us as if it happened to us here. So that's sort of what I was trying to say and to show. But there was also a dream that I had. I had a dream that, that scared me. Grace, my first novel, was started with a dream, but this one was different because with Grace, I was like daydreaming. With this story, it was a nightmare. I remember being in love in the dream. I was in love with a Chinese man, and in the dream, something happened that terrified me. But I woke up and I was crying, and I started researching, and then I learned about the Chinese massacre in Los Angeles. And I knew that I had to somehow put those stories in time. I wanted to talk about 1930s between the two world wars, but I wanted to somehow bring in that that dream because it felt so real to me, and I wanted to honor the people that I saw in that dream.
Were you already writing the story when you had that dream, or did that dream come first, and that's what started?
The dream came first.
Wow. Okay.
So I mean, it was 3 a.m. and I was just, because I was like, I'm never gonna write again. I'm so exhausted.
Oh my God.
You can't, don't ever say that, because that's when everything changes.
Exactly. And how long ago was that, Natasha?
It was, I think, 2018.
Okay.
2019. It took me about 7 months to write it before, and then sold it, and then COVID. So that was 2020. So yeah, it took a while.
Yeah.
Not
but
in
just
novel terms, but yeah.
Right. Grace came out. Yeah, that seems so fast to me. I'm like in awe. Because Grace came out in what, 2016?
Yeah, 2016, in June 2016.
Okay. So really, yeah, not a long time before the next story, the next idea, and for it to shape into a book. So congratulations. That's very prolific to me. It's all about perspective, right?
It felt like forever. People were like, it's been 5 years since her last, and I'm like, okay.
Oh my God, please
I'm trying out here.
And it's been 0 since, okay. So you touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted you to, well, you know what, let's talk about the title, The Perishing, which I love, but I sense that there are multiple nuances in that title. I mean, that root word, of course, means to destroy, but also to go through. And you kind of touched on this, but can you tell me how the title came to you and what kind of meditations you gave it?
Yeah, I really wanted to focus on all the ways that we transform and change. Our lives change, who we are changes. Is sort of a burning away of the old, and then there's a new, for all of us, especially through COVID. If we put on our COVID 25, that's what we call it, like the 25 pound. You probably didn't, Cassandra, but I'm just saying.
I don't know. Not quite that many, but I see my cheeks.
I was like, none of my clothes fit. No, but I'm not just all.
You don't look like you did,
girl. All the ways we change. But I really wanted to talk about just how we transform, because there's hope in it. Knowing that even as we feel like we're dying, especially now, the holidays are tough. There's so much pain. Horrible things are happening in the world. Just, here in LA especially. For me, The Perishing has hope that we're going through a transformation, shedding a skin, and what comes out of this, what grows out of this, is better or different, and it's hope in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though there's, it's such a journey of grief and loss and search, just so much deep yearning. But at the same time, there is so much hope in that metaphor of her immortality. In so many ways, this story is a death journey. Lou works on the death desk at the LA Times, but in that death, there is so much life. And I love that there's a character. Yeah, I know that you're Sagittarius, and I love that Sagittarius comes up. Which, when you think about it as a myth and just what it symbolizes in terms of the joy and even the philosophy, being a professor, publishing, just spreading joy. But there's also something deep. Maybe you have some planets, I don't know, in Scorpio, because there is that deep, going into the underworld. And in so many places, they go into the underworld in this book, literally, the tunnel, dying, and transformation. So I love how you weave both of those together, that very philosophical journeying, and also not afraid to go into those dark places, into death, into talking about violence there. And there's not a lot of violence in it. I don't want to turn anyone off by that, but there's one small specific place that's coming to my memory where that's just so vivid. And it's like, wow, I've never seen violence in that way and described in that way. And yet it's so vivid, but it's also so perfect. And I know you talk about your faith, you talk about dreams, you talk about things that, when we're learning, writing, the things that they tell us not to talk about. Don't include dreams in your work. Don't talk about faith. And I'm just curious how do you, you do it in such an authentic way, in a way that works. You're not afraid to use dreams in your work, to talk about how dreams influenced your stories. So I just like for you to talk about that. Like, how did you just not listen to those kind of preachy, don't do this, or did you not even know about it? How do you go into talking about your faith, using it, and also using the other world and the dream world in your work?
That's a great question, Cassandra. No one's asked me that before. That's a great question. I read a quote from the great prophet Tupac the other day. But he said, I want to open my mouth and I want what comes out to be the truth. So when I talk about my faith, or when I talk about a dream, this is just what happened. So the dream that I had, it's just what happened. Like, I'm not, or my faith, I can't separate it from who I am. It's all one thing. I'm not a religious person. I'm not, I don't go to a church. There's things that I do my own way, but I'm searching, just like I think a lot of people are searching. So I just wanted to tell the truth and say, what, I had this weird dream, and there was this Chinese man, and I was this white passing Black woman, and I loved him, and this terrible thing happened. That's just what happened. I'm not ascribing meaning. I don't think that I have a background that tells me what dream, like, I don't know what Sagittarius, like when you're talking about, going in the underground in the tunnels, I was like, really?
Yeah. Like metaphorically, absolutely. But that's the beauty of it, right? That it's unconscious, that the unconscious comes through whether you study that stuff or not. So I thought it was fascinating.
And that's our role as a writer, is to tell the truth. So the things, there's so many people, especially in my life, growing up in a very conservative household, the daughter of a police officer and a housewife, and just, growing up in very strict environment and being an only Black person in a white neighborhood. Everybody's telling me who I should be, who I shouldn't be. Even as an attorney now, you can't say things like that. You have to carry yourself a certain way. So I didn't think about what people were telling me not to do. I wanted to do this for me and represent who I am, because I learned in this second book that my voice, the power of my voice, is being who I am and not being who I'm told to be.
Oh my God. And how did that differ from your first book experience, which also is absolutely beautiful? Is that something that you came to, though, after that experience?
So Grace, I was honoring traditions. I was honoring, ghost stories, the way people have done it before, Toni Morrison, and all the powerful Black women writers who have come before me, and also honoring the Western storytelling. There's a part of us that are Western. That's how we tell a story. And I was very conscious of writing it in a way that fit the mold, but I still put my own, style into it. With the perishing, I was like, I'm just taking it all off. I need to be who I am and tell the truth. And I'm telling you, even when I was done, my editor looked at me. He said, well, there it is. I was like, there it is. Either people will get it or they won't get it. But I pray that it connects to people because it's the truth, even though it's fiction.
Oh my God. And again, I love how you said, I did it for you, scratch out at the beginning. I did it for you, but you did it for yourself. And Yeah, you come through so strong in this book, even though it's a work of fiction. There is something about the essence of it being the essence of you. So kudos. That's courage and that's powerful and that's feminist.
Thank you. Thank you.
Switching gears a little. Oh, so go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was going to
Oh
say
no.
that's for everybody who's here or who's listening. I don't know who will ever see this or who
Yes.
listen to this. The thing that's so beautiful and powerful about each of us is the puzzle piece that we bring to this
Mm,
to this game or this quilt called, life or whatever. And we're supposed to put our piece down, whatever that puzzle piece is, because it leaves so many gaps. So every time you've been told that you were outcast or you're not like everybody else or you're not this or you're not that, you know what? That's what makes you beautiful. That's your voice. That piece in between that you're keeping to yourself is actually your voice and it's
mm.
needed.
Oh my God, I love that. And it's so true. And it makes me think about, everybody will see once they read it, but Sarah, this older version of our character, and how she wants to, reach back. She wished she could reach back and tell Lou or warn Lou, but then she's thinking about it some more and she's like, would I do that? Because it is about our own journey. And some of us come to that realization sooner, and some of us, much later in life. So switching gears a little bit, I'm a transplant to LA. I've been here 20 years, but I'm from Louisiana. And I just think that, yeah, we'll talk about your Southern roots too. I think that all transplants should read this book. Well, everyone should read this book, but I really think that all transplants to LA should read this book, and all New Yorkers too. Because people come here, and I know as an Angelino, you see this probably all the time, and they just make these blanket kind of statements and judgments about what LA is when you haven't even, it really takes years of soaking into this huge place to get a sense of what it is. But your book gives us that, and it does it in such an engaging way and an artful way. And it reads to me like a love letter to LA, but the kind of love that really only comes from the inside, the kind of love that can critique, LA for all its failings, while at the same time just reveal to us parts that we haven't seen, help us, really fall in love with LA. And I loved, even though it's this book about immortality to some degree, it's so grounded in all the details. It's so grounded in Boyle Heights, which I loved reading about, all the history, all the sensory details that you give, as we go through these different neighborhoods and geographical spots in Los Angeles. I loved all the scenes in the boxing, at the boxing gym. Can you talk about your process of touring and research? And you've told me a little bit about this before, but I'd love for you to tell everyone else. Just your process of touring and researching our city, even though you grew up here. What was new for you? What kind of helped the city come alive to you in a new way? What's your love/hate relationship to the city? Can you talk about that?
Thank you so much. Yeah, those are great questions too. So I've LA is so vast. It's so vast. And there's suburbs and then there's the city of LA. And I wanted to write about Boyle Heights because Boyle Heights is considered East LA, right? And I grew up in an area called West Adams, which was an all black neighborhood at that time, which most people don't know.
It's the
So
first neighborhood I lived in when I left Glendale and moved to LA.
yeah, it's like that's that. Like I knew the guy who owned the dry cleaners. We would walk there. The guy who did the ice cream truck was a black guy. The guy who, the ice cream, the church, the cleaners, and all that. We were so much a small community. The fish fry, and so East LA was that other place that because my father was a police officer and he could only police our area because there were black people there. It was very segregated and strange that East LA was this other place that we weren't allowed to go. So I wanted to, and there's other reasons, working in criminal law, I also know more about that probably. Well, no, if you live there, you know what's up. But it's like there's different neighborhoods and it means something. So I wanted to explore areas that I was afraid of because I respected it, not because I was scared, like, ooh, I don't want to go there, but because I respected it. And also in its own way, it respected our neighborhood and it respected different, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I asked one of my friends, Mike Songson, Mike the Poet
Like,
Songson here in LA, so we just took a tour and we just spent time and I did a lot of research. I did a lot of reading. Like you have to, when you write about a place that even though it's in the same city, it's still in some ways an other. I
absolutely.
wanted to respect it by doing the research, like reading a whole lot of books, doing a lot of interviews, reading a lot of blogs, reading, even going to the Japanese American Museum because there was a lot of Japanese people in East LA as well. So really just respecting people. That's how I learned about it in
Mm.
this place we call LA.
Yeah, it was so interesting too that even though it was set in the 30s, that that neighborhood that you're a real neighborhood, but it's in this fiction book. It felt so diverse and integrated in some ways. Of course, racism is still alive and well, but in some ways, it's like, wow, this seems so beautiful. The friendship, especially that she has with Esther, the classroom settings, just outside when they're playing. What was that like? Especially because, like you said, when you grew up, it was more segregated. How are you able to imagine back in time such a diverse neighborhood?
I looked at yearbooks. I looked at yearbooks and I saw us, I
Oh,
saw the diversity of the city. And because I went to it was a religious school. I can't remember what denomination it was. It wasn't mine, but it was even in the late, this is like in the early 80s when I'm in elementary school, where it was diverse. And my best friend, her name was Esther, and it was Esther and Angel, and recently reconnected with Angel, but we were all like friends. And
oh,
and I didn't know that there was anything different other than, until I moved to Santa Clarita. And then I was the only Black person, my brother and I,
mm,
in school, the only diversity. So that's when we knew. But I wanted to honor that too because Los Angeles has always been brown.
I love that line. It absolutely has. Um, so, how old were you when you moved to Santa Clarita?
So I was 8 officially, almost 9.
Okay.
Um, but most of our every Sunday, every Wednesday and Sunday, we were back in LA because when you're part of a church community, we were very tight with our church. You're always there. Like there's no real going away.
Right.
But
They're gonna talk about you.
they'll talk about you. So I still hear from all of them. What you doing? You still wear those? Whatever. I'm like, okay. That was a long time ago.
Oh
No,
my God. I love it. I
um,
love it.
but that was that was the first time I was followed around, the local stores and things like that. I learned to hold my money in my hand when I walked so people could see I had money.
Oh,
Um, and I just thought it was normal. I just knew, oh, right, I'm a Black kid, so they got to know I got my money.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it gets much darker than that example, but yeah.
Horrible, especially, I mean, I grew up in the South, so I always had lived in that world. But having experienced something that was much more loving and nurturing, to experience that and then go to this very divisive, that must have been a shock, to you kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you first or second generation LA? I'm curious about your great
First
migration.
generation LA. So
First
my parents are
generation.
from straight up Alabama,
What
from a
town?
little town called Tallahassee, Alabama. So
Oh.
it's not far from, let's see, what's near there? Tuskegee. So Tuskegee, University, which used to be Tuskegee Institute. So it's just right, the Tuskegee Airmen and all of them. My dad graduated from Tuskegee. Um,
Mhm,
so yeah, so
mhm.
we're from Alabama. We're the first ones outside of Alabama, really.
So you guys were going back when you were growing up. Were you going back a
Yeah,
lot, or?
every summer we go back, but
Okay.
we were the first, and then my aunt came. But everybody else is still there. They've moved as far as Atlanta. They've gone to.
I was the first at 30, so yeah, they're all back.
You know.
Yeah. But something about your work though that feel, even though you grew up here, that feels Southern to me. So I was interested in that, how these two places, Los Angeles and the South, Alabama in particular, influences you as a writer and your voice as a writer. There's just something about the turns of phrases sometimes in the dialogue, even in the parishing.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Is that something that you've noticed, or?
Yeah, because you know how it is in the South. People kind of say what they mean and it's funny. Even when it's mean, it's funny. It's like, or it's different. And you're like, I never thought about it that way. And it's just how people talk so poetically. And I wanted to do that. And, and the Black people that came from the South to Alabama were, it was part of the Great Migration. You could read a lot about that. But coming there, and my family, my mom used to sing in Dr. Martin Luther King's choir, so when she came, when he was assassinated, a lot of church members moved west. They were like, you know what, I can be killed for the thing that I say, for the things that I say. If they'll kill a pastor, if they'll kill me, maybe we could make a new life somewhere else. So that's how we came to LA, and so I was always in the South as far as the people around me. I never,
I love that. And I'm in South LA, and you can still see the vestiges of that here. Black Louisianians, from the snow cone shop down the street to, the po' boys. And even when you're thinking about West Adams and Jefferson Park, the architecture, because a lot of them settled there initially. So it was just such a delight to see, to go on this historical journey in the perishing, and then also to jump in time again, not to spoil things, but it's like, oh my God, I mean, you're going to see everything from Latasha Harlan's to, it was just refreshing and fascinating, and you pulled it off. This is a daring, just genre-breaking work, as so many have said. So the perishing covers in just barely 300 words. It just covers so much. There's the concept of immortality and reincarnation, yes, but despite Lou's ability to transcend the inevitability of death, you go straight into the heart of historical and current socioeconomic issues, including race and racism, police and vigilante brutality, neighborhood displacement, job inequities, being a Black woman, being an only in a professional setting, interracial friendships, etc. While some have called this novel sci-fi, and our main character has the ability to live beyond all eras, why was it important for you to ground it in some of these very real and very heavy issues that we're still struggling with today?
Great question, Cassandra. Thank you for that. Because I wanted to show the cyclical nature of our violence. So working now in psychology, but also being, representing people, victims, and also perpetrators of crimes, there's like this cycle of violence that we have in interpersonal relationships, but it goes beyond interpersonal relationships. It's our nation, right? We're in this cycle of violence over and over again. I mean, you can compare some of the violence in the 60s to what's gone on even with Kyle Rittenhouse, like all of this stuff that's happening. It's gross. It's gross. And we have to, for me, it was like, we're at a point where we need a revelation so that we can stop behaving this way. We have an opportunity to mature out of these same decisions, to break harmful cycles. We know this as individuals, but we need to do this as a country. And so I wanted to keep showing, whether I live in 1930s or 1960s, or 1990s LA or 2020 LA, the violence, the uprisings, we're just in this cycle. Even mask wearing, that was part of the Spanish flu, right? The first mask. The anti-vaxxers, or if they want to be called anti-vaxxers or whatever, these are the same arguments we've been having since smallpox. So it's like the same things. And we have to look at it and say, is this who we want to keep being, or are we ready to break the cycle? So that's my biggest hope, is that people see these cycles for the first time and do something different.
Yeah, it is like a prophecy, you know, when we hear one character, Sarah, speaking to us from the year 21, whatever. It's like, wow, it is a wake up call. This is not, it's not where we want to be now, but we definitely don't want to think of our future and still be in these same places. So a lot to think about. And so much of, I was wondering about your process, you know, where you were when, of course, George Floyd happened, but also the pandemic, because so many echoes of that are in this book. Were you still revising, or?
Yeah, I had just gotten the book back and I had to do the major revision for this book. And I was grieving. And you know, it was painful to write. You know, when you have any form of depression, it's hard to move. It affects you physically. I was just crying, like, just to write a word. It was just so frustrating, and just crying, but feeling it, like nobody's forcing me to write. Nobody's waiting for the parachute. They don't even know that I'm working on it. And that's for all writers. Like, nobody's waiting for you. But I felt like I was called to finish it, that I had to keep pushing, that I had to do it. I knew I wanted it out this year. So I just, like everybody else, I'm grieving. I think our nation is in a deep grief, no matter where you are on political issues. It's all sad. Like, all of this is sad. How do we fix this?
The denial is a form of grief.
It's easier, right? It's easier if being in denial sometimes and dealing with the pain.
So I referred to this earlier, but I just think that despite all of these heavier issues, that this is such a powerfully feminist and radical act to make this young Black woman immortal. And I know that immortal, it takes on a lot of meanings. But there's just still, I mean, I just the enjoyment of reading, you know, that part, like if you just read it as a sci-fi piece, I mean, that in and of itself is fun and fascinating, and I think very powerful. There was something that you said in a Facebook post, and I had just finished the book, which was this week. But I had posted, I don't know if you remember, I posted the flyer promoting the event, and I called you a phenomenal woman in the tradition of the great Maya Angelou, and because you are, and you commented, phenomenal, period, impossible, period, yet here we are, period. And I broke down. I had just finished reading it. I was still taking it all in, and I know I will be processing this for a long time to come. There's a lot to process, guys. But I read that your words, you know, you, the person behind the author of this amazing book that I had just read, and I just thought about our mothers. I know that you have a Southern mother. I thought about our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, and yes, even about us. And I said out loud in the living room to no one at all, yes, in spite of it all, the impossibility of it all, we are here, and we are here phenomenally, despite our depression, our grief, wanting to give up. Thank you for, you know, the vulnerability that you create in this Black woman character who, yes, has the power of immortality, but she's vulnerable, she's naked, she has certain weaknesses, she's brainy, she's smart, she's silly, she's zany, she's all of these things that we often don't get a chance to be. Our mothers didn't get a chance to be in this world, our grandmothers certainly did not. So I just wanted to thank you for that moment, because my breakdown wasn't grief, it was just, I crumbled thinking how lucky we are, because we are still here, and I just felt humbled and grateful. So I just wanted to share that.
Sandra, thank you so much. Thank you so, girl, you're gonna have me crying over here. And I'm like,
I did my breakdown already.
Makeup first time in like 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna mess it up. No, but that's because as you were speaking just now, it was feeding me. Because I remember my mom was the youngest of 8 children, right? And there
Oh,
was
my mom is the youngest of 8. Oh,
yeah, it's like a
funny.
16-year difference between the oldest and the youngest. And I remember my mom, because she was young and she was and she is zany and she's funny and but in the South, that's treated like there's something wrong with you. Like you can't be kind of quirky or funny. And my mom always was. So people wouldn't take her serious, but she was smart and she was caring and she is loving and she's all those things. So when you were saying that, I was thinking, that's my mama. Nobody
Oh,
gave her enough credit for being who she was,
yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you for that,
And
Cassandra.
yeah, you're welcome. I think that they pass the torch on to us. Not that it's not that it's too late for them, but I think that's one of the responsibilities that we have as their daughters, to live out our own zaniness and to say when we need help, no, I don't want to be the strong Black woman all the time.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. I don't know everything. And those are some of the things that I really loved about Lou and Sarah too, and her honesty and looking back. So I heard a spiritual teacher say once that there's no such thing as karma. And I know some people don't like that word. So whatever you want to call karma, etc., is like the ocean and we're the fish, he said. There's no burning away the ocean. You just have to learn how to swim in it and change your patterns and thoughts around it so that you don't drown. And that just made me think of your book. Because as I was reading, I was like, oh, there was such pain, there's some scenes in 1800s, like I said, 2100s, 30s, we're talking about the 60s. And I felt so much pain and grief thinking, oh my God, she's gonna come back, but she's gonna come back to all those things that we were talking about. But when I think of it in relation to what he says about the ocean and karma and how we can't completely burn all of that away, but we have an opportunity to change our approach to it, to change our patterns and how we flow in that. I just think about the mission and the message in this book. What do you think about those?
Yeah,
that metaphor?
I love that. You know what? I love that metaphor because I'll be honest, I don't know about karma. I don't know nothing. That's what I know by writing this book. I don't know anything except that I'm alive today and I could do the best that I can today. And if I leave something undone, I could hope to be alive again tomorrow and then thank God when I wake up in the morning. Like for me, everything is possible. Karma or no karma.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's so interesting because we're Christians too. So it's like, wow, what a powerful thing to admit too when you grow up in a tradition of a faith where you're supposed to, know it all.
But I think that's the challenge too. I'm not talking about the religious organization of Christianity because they will tell you exactly what this means. Do you know what I mean? But I'm talking about when we sit there and just, I think there's a journey of all of this. And a lot of people blew it in the Bible. You want to read the Bible like Christian, you're going to see a lot of people. All of it is everybody messing up, right?
Everybody.
But I think I'm not trying to convert. I'm not even trying to go there, but I'm just saying that what I know is, and I don't even know if I included this in the book. I think I did. I said, you're not really who you're supposed to be until you lose your mind the third time. Everything you're doing before that is just cultural programming. Like there's going to be moments where you're thinking it's all over. I feel like I'm losing it. These anxiety attacks where you're pushing you somewhere else anyway. Like all these things that you're fighting, like you're shedding all of that to become who you're supposed to be. That's what I think. But that's not like in the Bible. I don't know. I'm just saying, but there's things that make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And even when for friends who are, just really bona fide atheists, it's like even that becomes a religion. Because why are you so angry about it? Or why are you trying to convert me with such conviction? Because again, you don't know.
Right.
So I feel comfortable in that not knowing.
But I understand
So I
why
know
they would
where
be pissed off anyway. I
yeah, I
understand. So I'm
understand.
like, yeah, brother. Like I can sit I'd be like, I get it. Because I do. Like if you're honest with yourself, you get it. Like
Yeah,
I get what they're saying. Like
yeah.
Christianity has destroyed so many people, has
Mhm.
killed so many people. I mean, there's some looks in the mirror that we have to do, but I'm not afraid to not look it in the mirror anymore. I used to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we have to leave time for our audience, questions for the audience. I just wanted to close with how, you know, how sometimes often you get to the end of a book and you feel a sense of emptiness and loss, and you're sad because that character that you fell in love with, they're not gonna do anything else. You're not gonna hear from them again. I felt sad that the perishing was over, but I didn't feel that same sense of loss because I know that I'm going to carry. There was something about the tonality and the wisdom of those characters' voices, and in particular, their internal voices that I know will continue to live with me. And just like you did this for yourself, I think that your heart is so big that it didn't stop there because you gave us to ourselves too. And what this book does is encourages us to just go really deep and want to make things better, whether that's through our art, whatever our careers are, parenting. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So Michael said he was going to come on at 10 till, and I did good. It's 10 till. Do you have anything else oh, wow. There you are.
Perfect timing. So we have a question from Dougwood, and he said, in the last month, I've read both The Perishing and We Are Bridges, and am overwhelmed with the awesomeness on display tonight. And he wanted to know, was there anything that either of you were afraid to write?
Natasha, you go.
I'll just start with the first sentence in the book, which is, I did it for me. Like I crossed out the for you. I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid of that line.
Wow.
Because Grace had such success and I knew that I could fail. But to feel like that I was so exposed, I didn't have a client to hide behind. I didn't have anybody else to hide behind. And I felt that, like, saying that is saying people are going to reject me, like me, Natasha, because it's so much just who I am. And it made it personal. And then I had to be okay with that because you're not for everybody. You're not everybody's going to like you, no matter how kind you are, no matter how hard you work for them, how much you try to tell them. You're not for everybody. And it becomes spiritually unhygienic and mentally unhygienic to force yourself, and people who don't belong to you, who are just doing a mess on your mental health, on your spiritual space. So I had to let it go, and writing this book helped me to let that go and just say, you know what, I did it for me.
Oh my God, that's so empowering. I love that.
It was awesome that I showed that to just about all my coworkers, and they thought that was one of the best dedication pages ever written.
Thank you. And thank you, Douglas, for that question. Cassandra, what do you say? And I love you, Douglas. Okay.
Thank you, Douglas. I didn't, even though I was writing a story about, the impetus for the story was the fact that my great-grandfather had been killed, my mother's father's father. I knew that the story wasn't just about him. It was about the impact of this one act of domestic terrorism on our family through the generations. But I also didn't want to just write a book that was pointing the fingers outward. So there are personal parts of my story. I was afraid, I had to write it out because that's my journal and I write, but I was afraid to share the story publicly, for instance, of my affair, marital affair. And that, there was a lot of shame, there was a lot of guilt, but I did it. And interestingly enough, I'm still alive and still can go out into the world. But there were 2 or 3 lines in the book that I tried to write in a tender way, very generically, that actually have been the thing that has caused a lot of fallout with family, with a particular part of the family. And it's the fact that I mentioned that, there had been a pattern of incest in the family. There are no names. So all of that worrying that I did about like airing my own dirty laundry, which is what I spend more pages doing, was nothing in comparison to the thing that I did not expect, because it's kind of public knowledge. Again, I don't name any names. The people who I'm referring to are deceased, and it was multiple uncles. That just caught me by surprise. So I guess my point is that no matter how much worrying you do, it might not be the thing that you're worrying about. So you might as well just get it done.
Amen. Finish.
That's great. Okay, we also have from Melissa. She wanted to know, I finished We Are Bridges and am reading The Perishing, and also raffling a copy to my students in creative writing class at Bronx Community College. Some of whom are here tonight. All right, Bronx. Can you share any words of encouragement for starting writers embarking on creative lives?
Love it.
Go ahead, Cassandra. You can start this one.
Oh my God. Hi, Melissa. I had such a great time talking to Melissa. I was a guest with her students, and it was so great. The questions were wonderful. If any of you are on here, hello again. I think, I love The Perishing because I felt, again, I refer to this, how I felt like a tourist in our city. And so one of my pieces of advice would be to treat wherever you are, if it's a tiny little rural place, if it's a big city, if it's an island, to treat, just be open with it. Fall in love with new ways. Always have a notebook with you. Always, have space on your phone so you can take pictures, and journal. I would report. I'm just always snapping pictures, taking notes. And I just think that's a good practice to have, because it just feeds you with creative fodder that you never know how you're going to use later.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And thanks, Melissa, for this question. Because I was thinking along the same lines. There was a interview that I gave to Nylon a long time ago, and I was like, is this just the wrong advice? For every young person, especially, I don't want to say like you're the future or, all that stuff that every adult tells you, because you are actually, but that's an aside. But get on the bus and go to the next city over. Start writing about those people that you see, because they are other people, or anywhere where it's not your life, not just your life, because it's hard to see, into your own life. It takes time to draw those things, but go and begin by talking about those other people in the neighborhood that you don't go to, into that grocery store that you don't usually shop at. How is it different there? What is it like there? Write about those people and what the difference is. And that's how I would start.
That's great.
When you're talking about neighborhoods, Natashia, I can't help but think of what you wrote about Boyle Heights and how an amazing, that was utopia back in the 50s. And there's an amazing book by a professor from USC George Sanchez, who wrote about Boyle Heights, that I highly recommend, who's also instrumental in getting USC to apologize to the Japanese American students who were their education was interrupted during World War II. So he's got a wide scope. But I'd like you to speak about Boyle Heights is kind of representative of your whole work in the perishing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. In some ways, yeah. Every setting, I try to make it alive, to be the world that we first say what we think we have and then what it really is. Because I see a world where all of the isms can just fall away. Like in my household, I walk in, my husband's English, white, and my children are biracial. My mom's from the South. I walk in and all of those isms go down, and it's what we have created in this space. When we walk out of the doors, if we're holding hands at the park and we know what this means to everyone else. So for me, because I'm a writer, and that feels good to me to be able to create a world where I can control what exists, what can be done away with. It could be like my house. That's the power. This is my house. When I wrote it, when I'm talking about I'm doing it for me, this is my house. These are my pages. These are my, and just owning it like that, because I want to live in a world like Boyle Heights was meant to be, before Japanese internment, before all just every, the declines that happened in neighborhoods such as Boyle Heights or West Adams. I wanted to create a world where all of that was dismantled, because I believe that we're capable of being those people. We're just not right now. We're confused.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that you both would like to add before we say goodnight and wrap this up? Wait, I think we might have one more question. I'm sorry. No question. Shanika, just wanted to let Natasha know I'm very proud of her and enjoy being a fan. Bravo. Hashtag own it. Hashtag famous XOXO.
I love it.
Well, thank you. I received that, and I'm gonna go to sleep tonight. I'm gonna be like, yeah, own it, famous.
I am too. I like it.
And I'm gonna share that with you, Cassandra. Own it, famous. You know what? Because
I'm taking it.
Yeah, we can encourage each other. That encourages me today. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cassandra,
this is so wonderful.
Go ahead,
no,
Cassandra.
I'm filled. Yeah, I'm filled. I'm inspired. I am hopeful. And I just thank you both, Natasha and Michael, and everyone who came tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have to leave you with one thought. Dave Thomas said he was super inspired, by the way, but I had mentioned a family member that reminded me of Esther, one of your characters. Actually, it was my late mother, whose birthday is today. And I was very proud to. Oh. She was very similar to Esther in the sense that she was an actress. She performed with Betty Grable, and it just reminded me so much about her character reminded me so much of my own mother. So I have to thank you for that.
I love that.
Thank you so much for saying that. What an honor. What an honor. See right there, that's everything. Like, I tried hard with this character. I wanted her to be alive. That means so much to me. That means so effing much to me right now. Thank you so much. And thank you for your mom. And you know what? And I know she went through a lot being in Hollywood. I know, like, I was reading, especially for Asian Americans, and, everybody, but specifically, just so much honor and respect for her.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Cassandra, Natasha, thank you. It was a wonderful evening. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please buy both their books and go out there.
Buy We Are Bridges. We Are Bridges.
cheerleader all day long.
There you go. You're good at it. Thank you, and have a nice, safe holiday,
Oh,
everyone.
you too.
Good night.
Bye. I love you, Natasha.